for me, not being seen or not really understanding my worth, it was harder for me to accept love from her because of the certain things that, I felt that maybe I wasn't, worth or worthy or seen. So that's a lot of things. We're talking about the success. That's what in the conversations that I'd had with, my real estate agent friends that are, crushing it when you really get down to it, they've had challenging childhoods, or there's something in their life, there's an internal turmoil in their life that is really dictating a lot of their behaviors for the wrong reasons.
Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote comes from J. Michael Straczynski. People spend too much time finding other people to blame, too much energy finding excuses for not being what they are capable of being, and not enough energy putting themselves on the line, growing out of the past and getting on with their lives. That's what we're going to talk about with our guest today. He's going to share his wisdom on how they live their best life on purpose and what they had to deal with on their journey. We share a lot more in common with our struggles and beliefs than we acknowledge or talk about. The path to living life for many isn't even thought about. Many wonder why they die with so many regrets. It doesn't have to be this way. And today we're going to share another journey that you can learn about. We'll talk about struggles, programming, relationships, lifelong learning, personal growth, spirituality, all of those things. Damon Eddy is a realtor in Colorado who loves helping people buy and sell homes. But more importantly, he likes helping them find clarity in key areas of their life through transformational coaching, and doing that quickly and fast. He's here to talk about his book and share his wisdom. Let's meet our guest. Welcome to Richer Soul, Damon Eddy. It's great to have you join us today.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much being on. I'm glad we could do it. We had a mix up last time, and I'm excited to be able to finally meet you in face to face, so to speak.
And I am excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
We didn't have much money. I remember growing up, before I finally met my wife, I think I lived in 16 different homes. None of them my mother owned or we owned, kind of, rentals. So we're just kind of staying with, different people that she may know. I'm an only child. So kind of, my parents divorced when I was young. So as far as money or being taught anything in regards to money, that was non-existent. School never teaches you anything that I remember or was aware about money. So yeah, I didn't really learn anything in regards to money at all. When my mom passed away when I was 15, I think she I was left about $600. And that was it. And I think I quickly spent that money, $600 immediately. So yeah, I never learned from my childhood and or growing up with any parent at all whatsoever in regards to money. I mean, even to this day, my dad is 82 and still kind of lives, I would say, day to day kind of gypsy lifestyle with, not making too much money at all whatsoever. So to answer your question, I don't think that I learned anything in regards to finances or money growing up, at all.
Was your dad involved in your life after the divorce?
Not really. I would see him during the holidays. We moving around a lot, went from New York to Louisiana to Southern California, Northern California. My mom moved around a lot. So I would see him. He lived in Florida. So I would see him in the summer. I was that kid that really young that would have the little airline wings and stuff. And they used to take you to meet the pilot and go in the cockpit and then you fly alone. But no, he wasn't really around too much at all.
What was it like having to constantly move?
No, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. But, I think as a child, when you're young, it's interesting how I think we are able to protect ourselves a little bit, in regards to, maybe different traumas and the different things that we experience or go through. That's why I think as a child, we have such good imaginations. And often those imaginations are used to remove us from, the current pains or things that we have. Now, imaginations as we get older can also hurt us as well. Those things that we do to maybe numb the pain or numb our existence if our life is challenging.
Did those issues then cause you issues later in life?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of times, I mean, it can go, Rocky, from, big things to little things. This is a podcast where we talked about, you mentioned talking about money. I think a lot of times when I think a lot of successful people, especially in my business, the real estate industry, they had rough childhoods. And I think, this is going deep, I think, right off from the very beginning. But I think a lot of times when we grow up as children and we don't feel loved and we don't feel seen, which is a lot of time what happens with kids that have rough childhoods, then we go into the world and we want to be seen. We want to be noticed. And a good way to be seen and a good way to be noticed, a good way to get that external validation is from becoming, quote, successful, whatever that may mean. And that's not always the case, but I think if, you see that. I communicate with a lot of very, very incredibly successful real estate agents. Back when I was one myself. And when you really get down to the deep conversation of it, a lot of this comes from childhood wounds that now they're trying to be seen because dad wasn't around, dad never encouraged them or paid attention or really kind of built up their internal worth. And maybe the same thing with mom. So what they do is that success, now they're able to be seen and now they're able to have it. So, but does it cause issues? Most certainly. I think the most unhappiest I was in my life is when I was one of the top real estate agents in the Denver area. And I made more money than I ever made that year. And I had a coach and everything like that, one of the Tony Robbins coaches, and I just wasn't happy. So that goes on to maybe another question. Does that success then bring happiness? So maybe that was a long-winded answer to your question.
So one of the original taglines was, you got rich, now what?
Okay.
Meaning that you have the success, but it didn't fulfill, and itch is probably the wrong word, but it didn't fulfill you. And it didn't give you what you needed.
Right. Well, I think that's the case, right? I mean, you have something I noticed in your website that you would do this even if you weren't able to be paid, that you enjoy what you do. And I think what happens is too often, people go for the money, they go for all these different things, and then they get, maybe the golden handcuffs, and then they find themselves that they're not able to do what they really love to do. So I think it's very interesting that people, I feel, need to identify really the lifestyle that they want to live. And then what is the income that I need to be able to live that lifestyle? But that comes with intertwining everything in our whole life, our different areas, right? Somebody can be incredibly happy, I think, for example, making $80,000 a year if they're able to do the things that they love to do. And maybe that's, just taking hikes up in the mountains. Maybe that's coming home and taking a walk with their family and the dog. And, maybe that's, maybe a certain league in the weekend where they're playing sports and they're socializing and having fun. And they're able to do that because they have the certain freedoms. Maybe somebody else wants to do a little bit more, and that's not going to supply the lifestyle that, they would want to do, or the freedom to be able to provide that to whatever their family or whatever their goals or motivation is.
And that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I've noticed is people who come from difficult childhoods tend to have the ability to strive for success, or they have a desire to do that. But then you get to the point where you have success. How do you give your kids grit without having them to have to suffer? Because, anyone who's gone through that doesn't want their kids to go through that. And so you create this fine line of balance between how do you give a child, the desire to go the extra distance without having to give them that spark or that fuel sometimes of having to go through rough times.
Well, I think it's interesting you say that, because I was thinking about it this morning. I think everybody talks about legacy a lot. I want to leave a legacy. I don't even know what that means sometimes, right? Because, often what we want to do is if we've come from a not so good background, a lot of times we want to change that, and we want to give our family, if we are lucky enough to have a family, different opportunities or a different experience than what we've had. So there is that motivation then that we have as individuals to change that for our families, and hopefully begin something to where then our kids are able to continue that. But I think what happens is so often we think legacy and we think, oh, well, I really need to pursue these things, these grand things. What we need to be careful is that it's external validation. And then do we pursue these things in expense for having the relationships that we need to have? So I think that's where that balance comes in, of really understanding that, right? Because it's interesting. One of the most important things for me, because I never had really a present father or really had somebody around in my life, I wanted to go into a profession that would give me the freedom to be able to have that relationship, to be at every single one of their games, to do and to have conversations and to be present. So it was understanding all of that, right? And managing that. But a lot of that takes awareness. And a lot of times what we do as an individual will go, well, legacy, I just need to create and I need to build this, whatever it may be, an empire, whatever you're trying to do. But then next thing you know, the kids are out of the house and you skip that relationship. So now what have you created? Are your kids then going to skip their relationship or not be present with their family, thinking that they need to? So I really think, Rocky, it's an incredible balance and awareness of how you want to show up and what you want to achieve in those areas of your life and the lifestyle that you want to create. It's incredibly important. You know, one of the things that you talked about with the kids is to you know, kids don't do what you tell them to do. They model what you do. And I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with somebody in regards to, you know, my kids, you know, they saw dad work hard. They see mom and dad invest in real estate. They see me work with clients. And they see all that, but they see my presence and they see me around and they see my work ethic. And what I mean by work ethic is how I love their mother, how I have, spirituality. I'm a Christian man, how that's important to me. They see all these different things, taking care of my body, whatever it may be. And then what happens is then when they leave the house, what I'm noticing, a couple of my kids who left already, actually 3, I only have 1 at home. I see that being modeled in their life. And that's what's important, I feel. So maybe hopefully that answered a little bit of your question.
It does. That's the legacy, isn't it?
That is a legacy, yeah. But I think sometimes what I'm saying is we get that messed up, or it's the wrong way to I think sometimes we think legacy, we tie that into money and success.
Yes.
And I think it's redefining what success is.
Well, I think Carrie Chapin said it best with his song, Cats in the Cradle, right? The son follows the dad. If you've never heard the song, it's, clear as day. Whatever you model is what happens. And parents who aren't there for the kids, when the time comes, the kids unfortunately aren't necessarily there for their parents or for their own kids. So the legacy continues. and it's not a good legacy, but it is kind of that legacy. How do you define success?
Good question. I think it's a couple of different things for me. I think success is freedom for me. And when I say that, it's for me, it's freedom to be able to impact the people that you want to impact. I think success is loving others well. I think success is being able to move through this challenging life. It is challenging, and still be able to, like I said, love others well. I know that's kind of perfect definition, but I do think success is defined differently for each individual. I think that's what they need to do. What does success look like for you? It could be, because it's different for different people. And I think success, almost in a certain sense, may change depending on where you are in your life as well. But I said a big thing for me is freedom, is to be able to do the things that I want to do, to be able to have the relationships, the conversations, the freedom to do things like this. That's incredibly important to me.
And that's a lot of what we talk about on the podcast, are these things, and defining it for yourself. Because I find most people don't define their own success. They try to mirror someone else's, in which case it's not yours, it's somebody else's. And then you wonder why you struggle. I know a long time ago you wrote a book. It was called Walks with Mr. Smith, a parable about 8 lessons in one big decision that could change your life. What inspired you to write the book?
I like to write, and I was, it's interesting. I was doing real estate at the time. I wasn't making too much money. Somebody came to our real estate office and invited me to a seminar. And at that seminar, it's the first time where I really got serious about personal development. And this must have been, 18 years ago, maybe not that much. But I went to that seminar, and there was an individual that spoke there, Chris Widener. And I'm not sure if he's speaking too much anymore, but he was a mentor to Jim Rohn, ROHN. And I just really, really fell in love with the idea of personal development and reading and learning. And I'd find myself journaling a lot and writing. And, I told myself, I said, I think I want to write a book. At that point I was listening to John Maxwell and everything like that. And, he wrote, I think, still writing a tremendous amount of books. So yeah, I just wanted to do it. I also, it's funny you say that, because legacy, I wanted to have something on paper. I wanted to have something that maybe my kids could have and read and enjoy. And I just got inspired to do it. I was doing so much personal growth, and really in this book, what I did is I took a lot of the big name personal growth books, and I kind of saw where the different similarities were, and then wrote this, I thought, neat little parable in regards to it.
Out of curiosity, did your kids read it?
The kids did read it.
Okay.
Yeah, they did read it. And it's a short read. It's only 110 pages. Did I require them to read it? No, I don't think I require them to read it, but they do have their own copies, and yeah, they did read it, and they said they liked it.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
As you think back, what I find with authors is you write a book, and then there's the process between you turn in your draft and then it's finally published, and all of this stuff drags out. And in this case, there's been a long time since it was published.
Okay.
What have you learned since? And is there anything that you think you would change that was in the book?
I don't think that I would necessarily change anything in the book. Since I started doing more of the podcasts and I picked up the book, I reread it. I think the lessons in there are incredibly good. I mean, they're just basic lessons like be thankful. You have to live a life of gratitude, seek your passion. I think you have to understand what it is that you stirs your heart, and to seek that. I think when individuals don't seek that, there's almost that I don't know. It's just incredibly to have that. You have to live a healthy life. I like what Jim Rohn says. Most people don't do well because they don't feel well. I think that's important. Seeing it through, and I'm kind of going through the lessons here. Our attitude determines our altitude. That's a John Maxwell thing. Our attitude is incredibly important. I talk about the gift of relationships. We don't live in a cave. We have to communicate. We have to learn how to have important relationships in our life. I think lifelong learning is another one. We have to continue to learn. When we stop learning, I love the idea of so many people are goal orientated. I think needing to shift to more growth orientated. How can I become better every day? What does that look like? And then giving back. I think what we learn and what we're taking in, how can we then bless others around us? I think that's incredibly important. So all those lessons, all those things that I said in there, I think are incredibly, important to understand that. But also, I think back then when I wrote this in 2009, 2010, I was very much of success driven, just work hard, a lot of external, which you would think it would be internal, but a lot of external, and not too much awareness of why to pursue these things, why to do this, and maybe just slowing down a little bit and really kind of understanding a little bit of life. Because when I was doing this, I was so determined to hit my goals, and that's where the real estate kind of really took off, and built this big team, and we were rocking and rolling. But internally, I think there's a lot more that individuals need to learn about themselves. Because I see a lot of people that are driven, they can go through all these things, but there's that internal struggle that they may be having that needs to be dealt with. And if it's not dealt with, then unfortunately what happens is sometimes, an incident or a pain, or it comes out. You've heard the statement, hurt people hurt people. And sometimes if we don't heal those wounds that we maybe experienced when we were younger, whatever they may be, if they're small or big. So I think it's more the internal that we need to be aware of as well, along with just the quote basics of success.
At the end of the book, you ask a question. If you died right now, where would you go? I think there's a lot of end-of-life questions we should be asking ourselves throughout life. Because let's face it, there are two things that are inevitable, right? Death and taxes. We tend to ignore both. One is external, and one is, in a sense, internal. What prompted you to end there with that question?
That's interesting. That's a good question. At that particular stage of my life, not that I'm not now, but I am a Christian man. I think my faith in my Heavenly Father is incredibly important to me. And I think it is something that our spiritual life is incredibly important. I think our relationship, with me being a Christian man, my Heavenly Father, that's important to me. I mean, for me, I want to understand God better. I want to feel that connection with Him, which I think is different for everybody. And through that, then I want to be able to love others incredibly well. And I think in order to do that, we do have to know ourselves spiritually. I think it's tremendously important that we do that. So yeah, that was a pretty, bold statement or whatever it may be, but I think that was also where I was, back at that stage in my life. Not that I'm not there now, but I think that is an important question of faith, because I feel that this life, it is challenging. It is, I think the futility of life a little bit. One of my favorite books in the Bible is Ecclesiastes. It's basically about kind of futility. King Solomon had all the wealth, everything, tried it all. And there wasn't much that he was able to gain off of that in regards to it. So I think it's understanding that a little bit more, that internal and our spiritual connection that we have.
You talked about feeling. Do you find that somewhat of a struggle because of having a difficult childhood? And then I'm making assumptions. I don't know if they're true or not, but I think people, because of that, many times put up barriers that prevent them from, so to speak, feeling, because they don't want, and it's because they're trying to block the pain, so to speak.
Well, that's what addiction is. Addiction is I feel going to something to numb the pain of what you may be experiencing. So that's why people go to things. That's why a lot of men go to pornography, alcohol, and women too, workaholism. Social media is a big thing now. So what we do is we have this internal struggle inside, and we go to these different things to numb the pain, or to feel a little bit better, or to not feel what it is that we may need to feel. I'm a big believer in the 12 steps. I've gone through the 12 steps. I think it's amazing. I think anybody should go through. I don't think you need to be an alcoholic. I don't think you need to be a sexaholic or addicted to all these things. I think it's a great thing to go through the 12 steps. There's a reason it's been around, because you learn yourself so much better. You understand, and 100%. I think learning how to sit and feel and say, why do I feel this way? And a lot of times with success and money, why am I going so much for this? And a lot of times I feel it is for that external validation that you never got as a child. So now you're seeing when you have the fancy car, you're making the money, but inside, going back to what I'd said, when I was, one of the top realtors in Denver, that's when I was the unhappiness. I remember getting a big award and this and that. And I went back to my room, my wife, and like, wow, okay, that didn't really. But internally, there was a lot of trauma or things that I was not aware of. Being loved. I mean, this is a huge thing. I was talking to my wife about the other day, and a friend at a breakfast. My wife came from such a good home where she was loved and she was seen and she was just really appreciated. And then I came from the opposite. And I think what happens is, you can love to the extent that you love yourself. And she really had that incredible, I think, safe, loving upbringing. So she came into our marriage already feeling love and just expected I loved her. And I was a very good husband in regards to that. But for me, not being seen or not really understanding my worth, it was harder for me to accept love from her because of the certain things that, I felt that maybe I wasn't worth or worthy or seen. So that's a lot of things. We're talking about the success. That's what in the conversations that I'd had with, my real estate agent friends that are, crushing it when you really get down to it. They've had challenging childhoods, or there's something in their life. There's an internal turmoil in their life that is really dictating a lot of their behaviors for the wrong reasons.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. Do you find people are open to having these difficult or deep conversations?
No.
Because you mentioned you have lots of them, so I'm wondering what your secret is.
I mean, I do, but I remember I was very good at sharing 98%. So I would come across incredibly vulnerable, right? Wow, this and that, but it's often that 2%. It's that thing in our life that we don't share that is actually affects us the most. So I see that. I work with a lot of men and men's group, and everybody, we get together, and it's, you'll share, like I said, about 90%, but you won't really share the thing. You won't really kind of get into it and explore maybe the trauma that they had, or the experience that they had, and or the addiction that they're going through currently. So you have that, there's I often talk about that 3 faces of a man. There's the public man, like you and I are doing right now. You see my face and what I put out to the world. Then there's that man that is the father or the husband. And then there's that man when nobody's around. And so you have the 3 faces of a man. And if those aren't congruent, what that does is it causes internal turmoil. So if I'm here on the public face and, I'm a great husband, a great father, this and that, but then I'm really not. Or and then when I'm really by myself, then there's some addictions that I'm struggling, whatever. There's not that congruency. And what it does is it causes that turmoil. So and until an individual can really, I think that's the importance, I think, of friendships and being, is until you have those individuals in your life. I think, women having great women in their life, 1 to 2, maybe 1 woman, and a man having 1 to 2 men that they know everything. And then you can share the struggle and you can be 100% honest. Then you can start to heal from those things and start to move forward. We're getting pretty deep here. I didn't know we're going to hit, but that's good though, right? Hopefully.
That's what it's all about is that the conversations that should happen that don't happen. And then this is like year 8. So, you go back 8 years ago, my kids were still in the younger ages. And so it's also, how do we raise them appropriately? How do we do things right? Because you don't know until they fly, if they fly. Because back then, the conversation is all these kids who don't fly the coop. And so that's the journey of how do I get better? And one of the easiest ways is you get a microphone and people will talk to you. And so we have the deeper conversations. Has there been a personal growth event, something that you did or attended that had a major impact on you?
I think that big one was when I got invited to that seminar to watch Chris Widener. I think I'm trying to think of the other individual that was there. I think it was that being introduced to Jim Rohn because of that ROHN. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people get him mixed up with Rome. They think I'm talking about the sports individual that has pretty popular, but I think that was a huge turning point in my life. Just the idea of growth and learning and understanding. I mean, some great books that I've read, The Richest Man in Babylon is one of those books on success that it just, George C. Clayson. I remember that Jim Rohn talking about in one of his seminars that, that book probably made him $250,000 or $1 million just by reading that book. And I do love to read. And I know people that don't like to read, but, audiobooks are incredibly popular right now, long-term podcasts or long-form podcasts like what we're doing. So people can learn, but I think people need to understand that, if that makes sense. I think there's confusion and there's so many different distractions out there. And I think it was really understanding that falling in love with learning.
I say there's not much difference between a man who can't read and a man who won't read.
Yeah, right. That's true.
And the majority of people don't read post-education, which is sad.
Right. And what's happening, I think social media and everything like that it's an incredible distraction. And, the biggest engineers or the most paid engineers are working for these companies to hold our distraction. And it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. I think it's, what happens is basically you're just going through and scrolling and just numbing and not thinking, not being self-aware of what may be going on. And it's constant. We talk about, educating ourselves versus being entertained. And what happens is we're going so much towards entertainment as opposed to being educated. And that ratio is way off. I mean, people are constantly entertained, whether that's, a show, a series, social media, whatever it is. And that's all entertainment. You're not learning anything really by doing that. Basically, what you're doing is just judging. You're saying, well, is this image worthy enough for me to even pay attention to? It's not real. It's not like when you get off social media or Instagram for scrolling for 30 minutes or whatever it may be, that you feel really good. I don't know too many people that have done that, right? They get off and it's like, wow, that was really awesome. I just spent 45 minutes on Instagram and I feel really good about myself and really good about my body. I don't think that happens. But what we do is we go back because it distracts us, and that's the whole way these engineers, as opposed to educating ourselves. My gosh, if people would just learn to focus more on education, their marriage may be struggling. Well, gosh, there's a lot of books. There's a lot of, podcasts. There's a lot of things on marriage. You could, instead of going to social to numb out the pain of the not so good relationship, my gosh, you could go somewhere and you could learn and how to be a better husband. You could learn, we could talk about how to invest, what you do with your money, because a lot of times it's not how much you make, but it's what you do with what you make. And people don't take that time to educate themselves on the things that would bring them better success in their life.
I have never heard of anyone who has spent their way to wealth. It doesn't normally happen. And there are a lot of people, and I don't know that people realize this. There are a lot of people who know how to make money, but the amount of people who know how to keep money is even smaller. And that is literally the secret. And that's why you see so many people who make money end up broke or have nothing left to give away. And even those that do finally do success and give it away, if they haven't taught their kids how to keep it, their kids blow it. And the stats show it across the board that the ability to keep money is not easy.
Well, that's that thing I think Jim Rohn talks about is people that are not successful with money, they spend first and then try to save what's left. But the people, or invest it, right? The people that are wealthy invest first, or they save, and then they spend second, whatever it is that they may have left over. But it's most people, they just spend, they want to, and you got to have a plan. You got to have a way to, what are you going to do with your money? That's incredibly important, which you're the expert on that. I don't think I'm an expert on that at all. But I think it's interesting what you said in regards to keeping money, because my wife and I, we are fairly good. We do have a lot of investments. We do have a lot of things that provides a very nice income for us, but we don't spend that much. It's crazy. It's crazy. We just, I mean, it's almost to the point where it's kind of, it's funny. And I think I see this in people, like I will really be incredibly aware of how much I spend and where my money goes, and almost to the point of things that other people might seem silly. Like I'll really, like, if I can save $200-300 on, let's say we have a lot of rentals, and we need an oven or something, I'm making sure I'm getting the best oven. If I can save $100-200, I'm making sure that that's getting done. Now that's just a small example, but that's kind of how we have really geared our life. We don't have a lot of toys, and I'm not saying toys are bad or wrong or anything like that. But again, it's understanding what makes us happy, and what makes us happy, my wife and I, is freedom, being able to travel when we want to travel, being able to see the kids we want to be able to see, kids be able to have nice dinners. We like to have nice dinners with each other, but being able to sleep at night and know that we have the income that we need to support that lifestyle, and to give our kids all the opportunities that they can get from, how we're able to give that to them.
The one thing I struggle with in this area is appropriately putting a value on your time so that you don't waste too much time to save $1. I can't tell you how many people will drive across town to save 5 cents a gallon on gas and spend $3 in gas and $20 in time to do it. And I'm not saying that's you. I'm just, it's that.
That's true. No, I hear you saying in regards to that.
Doing that appropriately. Everything has to be, I'm going to use the word balance as much as I hate it, but that is a classic example of, I think, where you take two things and you have to balance one against the other.
Understood. There's an individual, Chris Crone, that is pretty successful, and I think he hires out for everything. He doesn't do anything. But I also think in regards to that, and I just got given an example of, like, well, do I spend, 4 hours online making sure I save $200 on a self-clean oven? Like, maybe that won't be that smart. But I think it's being aware of where you are and what it is you're trying to achieve. Like, I'm very fortunate to have enough time. So, for example, one of our rentals, we had a sprinkler head go out. I'm not handy. I could have hired our guy for $150, and most of the time I do. But I have the time, and I said, well, maybe I can learn this craft, if it is a craft, of fixing a sprinkler head. So I went and did it. And maybe my time is more valuable than that. But I do think it's being aware and being smart in regards to all of it,
I'll be honest, I struggle with having somebody do everything for me. And I feel like you're going to miss out on life. And I think I feel like I'm going to miss out connections. And I don't mean connections with people per se, although by going places, you make those connections. But all the great things or changes that have come about are usually because someone took knowledge from one discipline and applied it to another discipline. Mm-hmm. And if you find yourself so myopic that you aren't out there, I call it being out of touch with life. Like, I see a lot of leaders that you put them on stage and they have a wonderful message, but they can't even figure out how to drive to the stage or how to use the microphone or like, they're so dependent on other people that, a little blip and they're essentially screwed. And that, maybe that's just a fear for me, something to explore. But for me, I want to be able And honestly, it probably comes down to that. I want to be able to at least attempt to be able to do whatever I needed to survive without having to depend on somebody else. Not that I couldn't say we have people who clean our house and mow our lawn and do all this other stuff. And I have rentals and I could do it all, but I pay people. But it's a choice then.
It's interesting you say that, because one of the biggest things that helped me in my success in real estate was right away, as soon as literally when I started out, I think I had to do 3 transactions, and then I could hire a transaction manager. I'm like, man, I'm not. So that was very early on that I hired a transaction manager. So in my real estate, I really don't do anything other than, negotiate the deal, meet with a client, negotiate a few things. But I really have been able to, which I think is important, what you're talking about, is to be able to delegate, be able to have people in your life that can do the things that you may not enjoy. Not that everything needs to be enjoyable. We have to have discipline to do the things that we, may not want to do. But I think that is incredibly important. I see a lot of people, not delegating, not understanding that, because when you do something, you're not doing something else. It's taking your time. So that's where that self-awareness comes up in our life, saying, if I want to be able to be home by a certain day and I want to be able to, exercise in the afternoon, there may be certain things that you need to delegate to be able to do those things. So that's where I think that awareness comes in, Rocky, like you're talking about. I mean, if you didn't have somebody to clean your house or somebody mowing your lawn or the different things that you have to do that. And during that time, is there something else that could be much more productive that you would enjoy more? So yeah, I think it's that self-awareness.
It is. And the reality is, I know that if I had to, I could clean the house. And if I had to, I could mow the lawn. So I don't feel like I don't know how to do something. I know how to do it well. I just choose not to do it. And so I think it's that kind of harmony. You've mentioned Jim Rohn a lot. Jim passed away quite a while ago.
Yeah, I think like 2010 around.
Yeah. Do you know a modern day Jim Rohn?
You got guys like Brendan Burchard. You have Ed Milet, Darren Hardy, John Maxwell. It's funny, all these guys, Tony Robbins, all these guys had relationships with Jim Rohn. They all knew him. I mean, I know Darren Hardy, who wrote this book, he talks about in one of his things going to a seminar in Dallas and sitting in the back of the seminar listening to, Jim Rohn speak, and they developed a great relationship. So yeah, I think there are, for sure, modern day Jim Rohns. But it's all I don't know, regurgitation is the right word, of success. I mean, there's these success principles out there, Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich, and all those different books that are out there. There's principles to success, whatever that success may be defined as for you.
And I'm pretty sure from Tony's story, Tony spent, I'm going to use the word hours, but it was probably years with listening to Jim Rohn and his message and so forth. So not surprising. That's
a great thing about it. This not to cut you off, but people often think, well, the mentor has to be face to face, right? It's like, my gosh, with the amount of audio books or audio CDs from Jim Rohn, it's unbelievable. I mean, that time he talks about turning your car into a classroom. I mean, my gosh, it's amazing the amount of opportunities we have to learn and to really have mentors in our life, especially with technology and everything like that. If you don't like to read, there's no excuse. There's other ways.
There was a point in my life where I learned quite a bit in the car.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a considerable amount. I used to drive a lot. So back in the day, that was definitely it. Do you think most people are confused, or do you think they have clarity?
I think most people are incredibly confused.
Why are they so confused?
How are they so confused?
Why? Like, how did they get so confused? Why don't we have clarity?
I think life is challenging. It is hard. There's a lot of different things, but one of the things that I communicate and on my website and the course that I have is going from confusion to clarity. And one of the ways that we do that is 6 questions to clarity. And what I mean by that is I think every single one of us have key areas in our life. We have areas that matter. I think we have our spiritual life, whatever that looks like for you. We have our relationships, whether that's, in a marriage, however that relationship looks like for you. We have parenting if we're lucky to be a parent. We have our health. All of us have bodies. We have our physical being. We have our careers. And sometimes we're able to have our certain passions or things we want to go over. Every single one of those areas in our life matter tremendously. It's like, a car going down the road. If you're trying to get from A to B and let's say one tire is completely flat or dead, it's going to be hard to move down that road. It's going to be hard to move through life. And a lot of times what we have, if people were to slow down and really evaluate where they are, put the phone down, put the social media, where really am I spiritually? Where am I in my marriage? Where is my relationship on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being 9 and 10 being incredibly great. And that's where I want it, but I'm at a 5, go through each area of your life. How am I showing up as a parent? On a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being a great parent, 1 being or 5 being I'm not being a good parent at all. Health-wise, rate yourself. And then in becoming aware of that, we talk about confusion. Well, you have to know where you are. And that's what I talk about, Rocky. Identify the most important areas for life. Where are you? And then say to yourself, where do I want to be? How do I want to show up? Okay, identify that. Get a vision for your life, right? Identify the areas, get a vision for each area, and then break it down to the 1 to 2 actions that you can do every single day. I think that's incredibly important. A lot of times what we do is first off, we're not aware, right? We let weeks, years, months go by and we have no idea. So then we're struggling in our marriage. We want to change it, but then 6 months or years gone by and we haven't done anything. And we haven't identified what it is that we need to do. I give this example all the time. A husband may come back and the wife's been home. Maybe she's working and she didn't have time to maybe do the dishes, but she's really excited to see him. He comes back and he thinks he's being a good husband. So he immediately starts to do the dishes and help out. And he looks over at his wife on the couch and she's giving him the evil eye. Okay. So then he gets upset because he's like, what the hell? I'm helping with the dishes. And, all she wanted was just for him to come and sit and have conversation. But what happens is they haven't identified in that relationship what matters most to that other individual. So that's what I talk about. There's not 1,000 things that we need to do in the most important areas of our life. There's usually about 1 to 2 things that'll move us towards the vision that we need to do. And I think that's in spirituality. I think that's in relationships and our parenting and our health and our business. Like if you want to be successful in business, there's not 1,000 things, at least of what I did in real estate that I needed to do to be successful. They're usually about 1 to 2 to 3 things that if I did them consistently every single day would bring me that success. So I think that's a big thing when you talk about confusion and going to clarity. I think it's a process of identifying those areas, identifying how you want to show up, what do you want in those areas, and then identifying what are the 1 to 2 actions that you can do every single day to, give you the best results or take you towards that vision. So it's really breaking it down to those things. And I'm a big believer in Rockies, you have to write it down. I talked about growth versus goal, and I think goals are important, that vision, but a lot of times now it's like people don't even set goals. They don't even have a vision. And if they do it, they put it somewhere where they don't see it every single day. But if you, I'll talk about what Jim Rohn said, you need to finish the day before it starts. And that's identifying the things that you need to get done in the day. And then at the end of the day, which Darren Hardy talks about, is kind of look back. How did you do in the day? So how did I show up as a husband? How did I show up as a parent? Did I do the things that we need to do? And a lot of times with parenting, it's just, my gosh, if we were to have a conversation with our kids, depending on where they were every single day when they're younger, We think, oh, I want to be an amazing father. Well, what if every single day you put your kids to bed and you said a little prayer, you read a story with them every single day? That would be a big impact, and that changes over time. But what happens is, Rocky, when we don't write it down, when we're not reviewing the day, say, did I do that as a father? Then, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years may go by and you didn't do the things consistently that you should have done. So I think it's just really understanding that, if that makes sense.
It does. And I have found if you ask people how many people have a plan for their life, the answer is pretty slim because they don't. And that's a big part of one of the things you do now is helping them with that. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. It's very, and I was going to these seminars and these things, and a lot of times you go and you fly and you be there, Friday evening and you leave like Sunday night, and I was able to, and I like those. You get around great people and you get hyped up and you get motivation. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to your daily activities that when you leave there, have you identified the actions that you're going to do every single day? And so that's my program, what I do. I think in a very short time, about 2 hours, that I can take somebody's life, working with them, identify those key areas and identify the 1 to 2 actions, and then give them a system and give them accountability to make sure that they are getting that done, because it really comes down to our daily actions. But there's a lot in there. There's a lot of reasons why we do things, and that's important. But at the end of the day, it's the actions that we take in the most important areas of our life that are going to, hurt us or help us.
So true. There's a million ways to do this. You got to find the one that works for you and just go do it. But I tell people, when you have a target, it is so much easier to hit your target than when you don't. And so you literally have to define one and then make sure it's in alignment with what you say you want. And then just go do it. It's really not that hard at the end of the day.
Right. And it's not always going to be easy to do. Right. I mean, with that statement again, what's easy to do is also easy not to do.
Life is pretty simple. Doing simple is hard.
Yeah.
It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Understanding myself and understanding what it is that brings me joy. I think abundant life is different for everybody. And I think being able to understand what makes you happy. And a lot of times, Rocky, it comes through growth and contribution. So I think an abundant life, to backtrack on that long way to get to a short answer, is growth and contribution.
I think most people don't understand themselves, and they especially don't understand their programming. And so they just run on it. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Good question. That I have value. I think that's a big thing. I think I would have, if I would have learned earlier my value that I can give to the world.
Everyone has value, and it's figuring out what that value is for you and how you bring it. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
I think going back to the first thing I said, I think growth, lifelong learning, continue to learn, and then learning how to contribute to others, all while loving others well. I think lifelong learning, and then how can I take what I learn and bless others?
I guess I was lucky. I've always had that desire of learning, and it just kind of stuck with me. I don't know where it came from, but hey, I love it.
Yeah.
If people would like to learn more about you and your programs, what should they do?
Just go to damoneddy.com. That's it. It'll take you right to the website. And you can see the course that I offer there. And I also want to offer up too, I put my telephone number, direct number anywhere. So if you can find me on social media or whatever it may be, I love conversations like this. I enjoy it tremendously. So I have a lot of men that just call me up randomly, and we either get on the phone or video conference, or meet at the local coffee shop, and we just talk about life. But yeah, DamonEddy.com, and text me, reach out to me, and if there's anything I can do to help, I would love to do that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
What small change do you want to make in your life? What do you want to do differently? How can you take a step that will help you get a little bit closer? That's really what it comes down to. Taking baby steps forward, never giving up, finding your way, and getting people to help you to be able to do that. Matter of fact, what's really cool is next week I've got Erin File on, and she is founder of a program that I joined to help me do these types of things. So we'll get to hear from her and see what she does and hear a little bit about what I'm working on. By the way, do you know someone who would benefit from listening to today's episode? I'd appreciate you sharing it with them. I hope you have a wonderful and abundant week. We'll chat soon.